Hey guys, I am Black Ops Amazing. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another Zombies Q&A, the series where I take your questions from the comment section below to do with the zombie storyline, Easter eggs, and I answer them. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, a like rating would be appreciated. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest content on the channel, but let's get into it. Here we go. Enjoy. The first question of today is from Nugget Zooms, and you say, what is the triangle thing floating in space in the moon loading screen, and also why is it there? So taking a look at the original moon loading screen, you can see up the top right on this image, there is the moon with Griffin Station on, Samantha's shadow, and then in outer space, you can see what looks to be a pyramid. Also down the bottom as well, you can see part of a pyramid on moon. This was also on the new loading screen as well. If you take a look here, you can see the pyramids in the exact same location. But the question is, why are they here? We know on the original moon loading screen, down the bottom left hand corner, there is a piece of the page ripped off. Behind it is the Shangri-La loading screen, which was our map previous to this. And on that one, what do we have? Well, you can see pyramids. In fact, we can see what looks to be a tornado going on. There is also the black sun logo on the ground, lightning, but the pyramids are being sucked up, ripped up from the ground, and taken away. So the obvious question is this floating pyramid that we see in Moon one that got sucked up by this event in Shangri-La and spat out in outer space? Maybe, possibly, they don't look exactly the same. But what's also strange is, why is there a pyramid on the moon anyway? Because when we play, the only pyramid that we see is the MPD. Of course, it looks nothing like this. That was an ancient device built by the Apothecans, whereas this looks more handmade by humans. But we can see it on the loading screen, however, it isn't in-game. The one on the moon or the one floating in outer space. So what are they? And why are they here? Also down the bottom right on the new loading screen, we can see we have Samantha's shadow standing over some orange mountains, it looks like. And again, if we go back to the Shangri-La loading screen, the background looks very similar. So there are obvious links between Moon and Shangri-La here. But even if that pyramid floating in the background was from the Himalayas, that still doesn't explain why there is one already built on the moon. It's one I just don't have the answer to and has never been explained to us. I've always seen it, but I've never really questioned it. There must have been a reason as to why Treyarch put this here. The second question of today says, why didn't Nikolai tell the others about what will happen? So you're clearly talking about Tag der Toten. You're asking, why didn't Nikolai tell the other Primis and Ultimus characters of Takeo, Dempsey and Richtofen that it would end up with them dying? If he knew that the only way to end all of this was for all of them to be killed, why didn't Nikolai at least tell the other characters so they could have said goodbye? Well, remember that Nikolai was the only one out of the crew that still had a soul. Richtofen, Takeo or Dempsey didn't, since Richtofen killed a child version of himself in Dimension 2210, and Takeo and Dempsey's soul were inside of the summoning key, since they were collected from Durais and Draka and Zetsubo no Shima. But because the characters hadn't been to Gorod Karovi during this time, Nikolai still had his own soul. And this was important because it meant that Nikolai was the only one that could end all of this. We often think of the soul as something that compromises the mental abilities of a living being. It gives you reason, character, feeling, consciousness, memory, perception, the ability to think for yourself. If you say to someone, you have no soul, usually it means they are evil, they only think about themselves. Or on the flip side, like I just mentioned, if you say you've got a nice soul, or something like that, you're usually talking about them being a good person. And so because Dempsey, Takeo and Richtofen didn't have a soul and Nikolai did, that meant he was the only one that knew what the right thing to do was. If you gave this choice to Takeo, Richtofen or Dempsey, more than likely they would have been selfish and not done what was necessary to fully end the cycle. They wouldn't have killed themselves. And so if Nikolai would have told the other crew, perhaps they would have tried to stop him, they wouldn't have gone along with his plan, they might have thought he was trying to betray them and perhaps killed him? We don't know, but because the other characters didn't have a soul, they wouldn't have had the ability, the consciousness, the feeling to know that killing themselves was the only way to give the children a future. Whereas Nikolai, because he had a soul, he knew this. And that's simply why the other characters couldn't know. Instead of telling them, he just quietly poisons them. I will say one thing, and that is, surely Richtofen must have known. We don't exactly know which version of Richtofen we see in Alpha Omega and Tag der Toten. We don't know where he comes from, but there's a chance he could have read the Canorium, and if he did, that means there's a chance he knew it would end up with him dying. And that's also part of the reason why the Canorium was handed over to Nikolai, because Richtofen knew since he didn't have a soul, he couldn't go through with it. The third question says, why are there statues of Primis all around zombies? Now, I think the most famous set of statues of our Primis characters, Takeo, Nikolai, Dempsey and Richtofen, are in Origins. However, they can be seen in multiple other maps as well. One of those is in Revelations right here, between Der Eisendrache and Shangri-La. You can also see some of them in Gorod Karovi, in one of the areas where you ride the dragons. However, here you can see some of the statues have been knocked down. They are also in maps like Der Eisendrache as well, but as you say in your question, why do we see them around zombies? Well, if we go to the Canorium, it says, on June the 4th, 1300, in northern France, a tomb is constructed to honour the fallen soldiers of the Great War. Within it, statues of Primis are constructed to symbolise the hope that if one day a great evil falls upon mankind, they may return. So we find out that the statues that we see in Origins were constructed to symbolise hope that if evil was to return, Primis would come back and defeat them just like they did in the Great War. We know during this battle between the Keepers and the Apothecans, Primis came in and helped to defeat them. Without Primis, humanity could have been lost, and so basically to say thank you, to remember them and symbolise hope, these statues in Origins were built. But what about the ones we see in other maps like Gorod, Der Eisen, Revelations? Why are they there? Well, we know Der Eisendrache Castle was built by the Wolf King, or the people who worked for him. The Wolf King took part in the Great War. In fact, it was Primis who instructed him to build the castle, and so the reason why we see the statues there is probably because it was Primis who told the king to build it, and it was them who helped him win the war. But as for Revelations and Gorod Karovi, it is a little bit more unclear. Since Revelations is a mixture of a load of different maps and locations, I'm not too sure where the location that we see the statues in that map is. It could have been somewhere in the Great War, I don't know. But then Gorod Karovi takes place in Stalingrad, so why statues of Primis would have been built there, that one's a little bit strange. The Great War took place in France. These two locations are quite a distance away, but we do know the Wolf King's castle is in Austria, which shows other countries were involved, perhaps Russia or people from there were involved during the Great War as well. So possibly the reason why we see statues of Primis in loads of different locations is because people from around the world were involved in this fight, and so to symbolise hope, they were built in multiple different areas. And the final question of today from Snow Knight Blade says, should there be another map with the 4 Marines? Now, I was thinking about this the other day, where I made the video on Zombies Chronicles 2, and then I was also talking about Black Ops 5 zombies. Could we continue with the Ether storyline, or would there be a reboot? And then, looking at this made me think, well, instead of a reboot or carrying on with the storyline from where we left off, how about we go back to certain points in our zombie story and tell the tales of characters that we never knew of that were involved in the outbreak. Kind of like a Zombies Tales. It tells the tales of other characters that were involved in zombies that we just never heard of or never saw. Because of course the zombie apocalypse was worldwide, there were other survivors on Earth, it wasn't just Primis, Ultimus and Victus. There were many more people. They would have had to fight off against the zombies for themselves, they would have had to attempt to survive. So what if we got maps that told the tales of those other characters? As you say in this comment, what about a map playing as the 4 Marines we used in Nacht der Toten maybe? We don't exactly know what happened to them after Nacht. We assume they died and got overrun, but for all we know, they could have escaped and then gone on to a different location. How cool would it be if they told the tales of other characters that were involved in our story that we just didn't know about? It could just be random survivors. I think it'd be really cool if we were told the story of the Flesh, that group of survivors that ate the undead, if we played as them for one map. And also, if they did this, they could be so creative with the Easter eggs. Perhaps the characters we play as have to do a number of different things in order to escape, or build their own teleportation device, something absolutely crazy, because it wouldn't really have to make sense in terms of storyline. It wouldn't really have to add up or link into what we've seen so far with Primis and Ultimus, because they would be doing their own thing, trying to survive for themselves. I mean, if they did this, it'd be really cool to see Easter eggs relating to Primis and Ultimus, but I think it'd be really cool, and every map that they did tells a story of a different set of survivors. So there we go. Let me know your thoughts about that in the comment section below. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed. If you have, you know what to do. Drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel. Leave your thoughts and any questions you have in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.